All right, so we're very happy to have on with us the Wisconsin State Council Chair, Mike Kuhr. Mike has agreed to join us for two tips, a tie, and a tune. So, Mike, thank you very much for being with us.
Absolutely, Tom. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, great to have you on. And, being that you're the Wisconsin State Chair, we'll get to your two tips, a tie, and a tune. But first, we got to pick your brain just a little bit. Maybe you can catch us up a little on what's happening at the Wisconsin state level from the Trout Unlimited standpoint. And actually, maybe it'd be good. Could you describe your position just a little bit too with the state and TU?
Sure, absolutely. So the way TU works, we're all grassroots organization here, even at the state level. We don't have paid staff, so it's all volunteer. But we do have a state council that functions as each chapter has two delegates that they can send to state council meetings, and they have two votes. And so in that way, all of our 21 chapters are represented. Those chapters elect officers and leaders to kind of keep moving the state council forward, and the state council kind of acts as the middle person in between the national organization and the local chapters. So there's a kind of go between. Sometimes an issue comes up and maybe you don't need to call somebody at national, but maybe somebody at the state council can help you out. But we also help national disseminate information back to the local chapters as well. So
okay. And you've been in the state chair role for how many years?
So I've been state council chair for coming up on 2 years.
Okay.
Before that, I was vice chair for 4. So
okay. All right.
I've been involved with the council for a number of years now.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit, what are some things that are happening at the state level from a TU that maybe a lot of us in the local membership might not be as aware of or should be aware of?
Yeah, so well, I would think the main thing that people would probably notice is what we're doing right now is a lot of virtual connecting just because of COVID, that we're not able to hold those regular chapter meetings and local functions like that. And I think the state council, we recognize that there's an opportunity to kind of step in and engage our members in a new way. And so we started a series called Talking Trout. It's a series of Zoom meetings. We do the first Wednesday of the month at 8 p.m. Central Time. The goal is to try to have a variety of different guests come on, give presentations and Q&A. We've had Sean Sullivan from the DNR on. We've had recently we had Chris Collier from TU Great Lakes Stream Restoration Manager. Gave a great presentation about fish passage and how important it is. So we're looking to expand that as a way to engage some members.
Those have been great content and great presentations and great way to link people up.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's turned out really well. I've been really surprised with how well it's taken off. And I think doing it on a regular schedule, I think once people get used to, it's the first Wednesday of the month, I should hop on and see who they're talking to tonight. I think the hope is that it will become a regular thing from here on out. The person who helps me host that is Clay Parmley. He's actually in college right now, and he's taking a podcast course. So it's his intention is to kind of take these Zoom meetings and like break it down and turn it into a podcast at some point. So we'll see if that happens.
It's great. Yeah, it's great. Those are great ways to connect and really great content. That's outstanding work at the state level. Do you think that's going to keep going on through the winter? And
absolutely, yeah, we have plans. We have the next 2 guests lined up for sure, and we're working on the rest of filling out the rest of spring. So I think even when things get back to normal with COVID, I think we're still going to do it because it's a great way it's another tool to help us tell the stories of success stories, the great work that our volunteers are doing and the rest and how important that restoration work is. So I think we're going to continue to do that.
That's great. Yeah, that's excellent. Really great things happening. Anything else that's coming down the pipe or things that are happening that we should know about?
Yeah, I wanted to just take a minute and talk about advocacy. And, obviously at the national level, we've had a huge win in recent weeks with the announcement for Bristol Bay that the permit for Pebble Mine was denied. And we're ecstatic about that. But we've been focusing statewide on the Knowles-Nelson Stewardship Program, which is Wisconsin's iconic public lands initiative that started back in 1989. And it's, anybody who fishes you go and you fish and you see those, private lands leased for public fishing access. Anytime you see one of those signs, that's Knowles-Nelson Stewardship. That's that program in work on the ground, on the landscape. So it's vitally important to the work that we do. And it's up for reauthorization this year. We're pushing the governor to put into his budget a 10-year reauthorization. And we'd like to see the funding increase. The funding levels right now are at 33 million a year. Previously, the last time it was reauthorized, the funding level was at 86 million. So it's been cut more than half of that. That was back in 2010 or 2011, I believe. So we would like to see it increased a little bit there. So obviously, the governor's budget comes out in February. We're going to be taking a close look at that. And then the Joint Finance Committee is going to really set the table for that one. So we're looking to do some in-district meetings with specific legislators. We're going to try to get them out on some local projects and showcase some of the work that our local chapters are doing on the ground and show them how we put Knowles-Nelson Stewardship dollars to work. So.
Yeah. And is that the kind of thing that moves the needle a little bit, Mike, in terms of legislators being able to see what the tangible benefits of those dollars are?
It absolutely is. Yeah. When you get them out, when you can get somebody out on the site, like you're not going to change everybody's minds, but if you can get them out on the site and at least when they're having those discussions in the Capitol, like they have that experience to lean back on, like this is the type of thing that stewardship does. They can think back to that time that they spent 20 minutes streamside with us talking about a project and they kind of get it, even if they're, if for whatever the political reasons they don't want to support the program or whatnot, like they understand that it's doing good work. So
yeah,
there are a few naysayers in the legislature and some fiscal hawks, I think, that are really going to take a hard look at this program. And I think they see it as an easy way to cut some money out of the budget. But I think we're looking at it as this is the best investment that you can make when you look at the outdoor recreation economy in our state and continuing to keep that healthy. So,
yeah, and a pretty unique state in terms of water access and water quality and things like that are very different than some other states out west or even closer. So
absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So those are good. So Knowles-Nelson, and those are things that I know that you and the state level are keeping us posted on as well. And sounds like too, that's a good action. I know that there's some email lists and things that people can get on, and they're pretty active about keeping updated on the Knowles-Nelson. And I like your ideas of moving the needle of, getting people aware of it and legislators aware.
Yeah, we've done a couple of site visits this fall, socially distanced outdoors. With masks and things like that. And it's going pretty well. So we're looking to do some more of those this spring with some legislators. And like I said, we're just trying to set the table so that everybody understands what's on the line and how important this program is.
And that's a great example too of, the things that, a lot of us aren't as aware of what goes on behind the scenes, both at TU, at the local level, the state level, federal level, and really good examples. And I think that, one of many reasons to get more involved in TU and all the work, because those kinds of things, we don't know all the work that you're doing and your colleagues and people at TU are doing to make those kinds of things maintain or enhance. And those are critically important to the habitat for sure.
Yeah, the nature of the beast is, a lot of that work just happens behind the scenes and you don't get a chance to see the nuts and bolts of all the work that gets put into it. But we've got a long list of partnering organizations who are working equally as hard on this issue as well. So there's a huge conservation movement looking to push this over the edge this year. So in the coming year, I should say.
Yeah, that's great. Well, we'll definitely be staying tuned and active and look forward to the updates and staying involved in that. So, well, let's do this. How about if we get to your 2 tips, a tie and a tune here? So I know we could chat forever on all other things, but so our 2 tips, a tie and a tune, a little bit of an informal way to pick your brain. And now we get the state council chair. You probably have an in with all the fish and the fisheries and all those things. So people are going to be glued to your tips for sure. So let's start. What kind of tips do you have for us?
Well, I've been thinking about this, and it's hard to believe, but the inland trout season, like the early season, opens in what, 2.5 weeks?
I know, right?
I mean,
right.
It's pretty crazy. So I thought I'd drop a winter fishing tip for some of you folks who've been thinking about getting out, particularly in like January, February, which is something I try to do every year. And I will say, lately it seems like we get a couple of days, in those winters that are like, we get some really warm spells, right? You get some days that'll hit 40, 45 degrees and you're like, oh, it feels great outside. I want to get out there and go fish. And my advice to you, if you're going to be serious about winter fishing, is to maybe avoid those days, at least where there's snow on the ground. And instead target days that are like in the mid 30s. So ideally what you want is a day where the temperatures, where it doesn't get too warm, where all the snow is going to melt and send like 33-degree water into the stream, and that just shuts the trout right down. That burst of cold water. You imagine being in a shower, right? And taking your nice warm shower, and all of a sudden the hot water goes away, and you go, what happened? You don't feel like eating anymore. So I would stay away from those really warm days. The other benefit of that, you fish when it's like mid 30s, is that you don't have guides that are icing up all the time, and so it can be a lot of fun to be out there. So
yeah, that's a great point. And it's tough when those days get nice, and sometimes I think even in your head, like, I might not catch anything, but it's a nice day to go out.
yeah, as long as you realize you're just going out and taking a hike, you have that mindset.
Yeah, it's a great point though. And even, the idea of winter fishing, like you said, a couple weeks away from it. And some people, when you talk to them, some people even say, so do you fish through the ice, or how, is it, no, it's going, but you forget that warm days, the snow melts and that changes the temperature that's a great point. Mid 30s, not too cold, not too warm.
Exactly.
Perfect.
Right.
And they'll come, right? Those days will come. Get some in January even sometimes. So yeah, great point. And no frozen guides. That's another good one.
Yeah,
it's another good one. Any other tips that you have for us?
So I will share another one. Anybody who's fished with me knows that I'm a big proponent of the roll cast. And I would say, if you're not roll casting, or if that's not a tool in your arsenal, for those of you that fly fish, I would say make it a point in the coming year to teach yourself how to roll cast and get better at it, because that will save you. There are so many times on the stream where you just can't make that back cast, and just being able to pick up the rod and like flick it forward and get your line to lay out 30 feet. It saves a lot of days. It'll save you in a lot of spots. So
that's a great point. And you'd advocate for that winter, spring, summer, fall, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, that's a great point. And, especially for those that are watching that might be a little bit newer too, sometimes, you get the idea that it's going to be, you pull a bunch of line and some big back casts, and
it's not. A lot of times you're dealing with narrow corridors, and you've got a lot of brush on the side of the stream, or there's a tree limb hanging in your way, and you just can't make that back cast. But you want to get the cast in there. So that roll cast, that really works wonders. And I would say, if you're going to learn it, or if you want to practice it, the best place to do that is find a local pond, some place where you can just stand on the shoreline that's like flat water, and you can kind of see what your line's doing as you kind of pull it back, pause, let that loop kind of form behind you, and then you just flick it forward, and you can kind of watch everything unroll. And you spend like half an hour, an hour on a pond, just practicing your roll cast, and it will save you so many times out of the trout stream.
That's that's a fantastic tip, and underappreciated, right? The roll cast, definitely.
Yeah.
That's great. Yep. Okay. So already a couple of good tips, and you can find a mid 30s day, do some roll casts on the trout streams. Okay. So how about a tie? Tell us about a tie, or a story, or a fly that you got.
Sure. So one of my favorite flies is called the Milwaukee Leech. And I live in the Madison area now, but I lived in Milwaukee for about 15 years. And when we first started going out to the driftless area, and I went out there with my friends Henry and Todd, and this was probably like 10 years ago now, maybe even longer. And the driftless angler had just opened up. I think they were maybe in their first, maybe their second year. And we were out there, and I was just learning how to tie flies. Like, I'd really gotten into it, and so I had tied a ton of flies that winter. And we were out there in the spring, and we stopped in the fly shop, and I probably got some tippet or something like that. My buddy Todd and my buddy Henry, they were buying a bunch of different flies, and I was like, I don't need flies. I spent all winter tying these. I don't need to buy store-bought stuff. So we all got our stuff, and we walked out, and we went out to the trout stream. And we got there, and I think I took the middle section. I think Henry went upstream and Todd went downstream, right? We all went and fished our own separate ways for 2 hours and then met back at the vehicle. And we got back there, and I think it was Henry got back first. And then I came wandering up, and Henry's like, "Hey, how'd you do?" And I was like, "Man, it was slow. I think I maybe moved one or two fish, and I didn't hook anything up. And it's just a slow afternoon or whatever." And Henry's like, "Oh, really? That's strange." And then Todd came walking up at about this point, and then it was, "Hey, Todd, how'd you do?" Todd starts he's like, "It was really slow for like that first hour, and I changed flies, and after that it was like magic. Like, the trout were just attracted to this fly." And Henry had the exact same experience. And so they're both like, we did the same thing. I like switched my rig, and all of a sudden, so I'm like, "Guys, what did you catch them on?" And they pulled out these flies that they had bought that morning, and it was the exact same fly. And it's like a bead-headed woolly bugger, I guess, but it's tied with this Arizona semi-seal leech material for the body. And it just worked dynamite that day, and every day since. We've had a ton of great luck with it. And so Todd proceeded to go back into the shop that afternoon, and he bought like the rest of them. He bought Matt and Jerry out of those flies. And we came back the next year, and the fly was no longer called a bead-headed leech. It was called the Milwaukee Leech. And the name has stuck ever since, because Todd would go in there. They get these Milwaukee guys who would come out to the driftless, and they're just we're buying these by like dozens of them.
Oh, that's great. And so do you think they still have those as the Milwaukee?
It's still called the Milwaukee Leech. And so they used to always tie them with brass bead heads, and now you can get what's called the downtown Milwaukee Leech, and that's got a tungsten bead head, so it gets down even further. Whoa. Which is nice. There's some pretty good marketing going on there. But
nice. Oh, that's great. The
still one of my favorite flies, Milwaukee Leech.
Nice. Oh, that's great. That's a great story too. I bet if people have seen it in the shop, then they know the Milwaukee guys now, huh? That came and did it. Oh,
yeah. And of course, I have the notoriety of being the one guy who didn't catch any fish because I was too stubborn to buy a fly in the shop.
But you also, then you're also part of the experiment. You've got your control group and your experimental group. So without your lack of success, they wouldn't have known it was the fly. So
that's true.
You're part of the story. Oh, that's great. That's a great tie. Great story. So how about a tune or tunes? What are you listening to these days?
So I listen to a lot of punk rock music, which people will probably maybe find surprising, but kind of loud, raucous stuff. And but I want to share something with you that may be a little more approachable for some of the folks that follow along. So I'm going to drop the name Frank Turner is one of my favorite artists. He used to be in one of those loud punk rock bands as a lead singer, and then for the last 10 or 15 years, he's been doing solo. He'll do solo acoustic stuff, and then he's actually got a band now that backs him up. But a lot of it is still played on acoustic guitar, although they've been mixing more and more electric guitar into that. So again, name's Frank Turner, and it's Frank Turner and the Sleeping Souls. And if there was an album I could recommend, I would ask you to check out. It's called England Keep My Bones. And there's a song on there called Rivers, which I think a lot of folks may identify with. He's from Britain, so he talks a lot about being on the island and how the rivers kind of run through the island and out to the sea. But it kind of hits home in some of the spots. So you can almost hear him playing it and picture yourself out in some of these rivers or some of the rivers that we've experienced. And it's a lot of fun. But he's probably the hardest working musician out there. He has kept track of how many shows he's played live, and he's well over 2,000 now. Oh. He's in between 2,000 and 3,000. So it's pretty amazing that somebody could just perform at that level for so long. So
yeah. Oh, so Frank Turner, and what was the band's name? And the
Sleeping Souls.
And the Sleeping Souls. Okay.
Yep.
And Rivers is the song. Oh, that's great. That's really interesting. That's a wonder, and a great tie into the water and the fisheries too. That's wonderful. That's great. That's Absolutely. Great. So 2 tips: find the mid-30s days, get your roll cast down. Think about the Milwaukee Leech, and you know the story now, and thank you when you catch fish on the Milwaukee Leech. And then Frank Turner. Yeah,
there you go.
That's fantastic. Well, Mike, thanks a lot for being on. Appreciate it. Thanks also for the information. And again, Knowles-Nelson in particular to keep an eye on. And thanks for all your work at the state level. We sure appreciate it. Mike, real quick, for the state meeting, that February-ish, is that right, for the annual meeting? And what are you thinking? Is that going to be a Zoom or in person, or don't know?
Yeah, so we've canceled the banquet this year. The February banquet is off. I think we're going to do some sort of an online fundraiser a little bit later in the spring for the state council. But the state council meeting will be on Zoom, and it'll be that Saturday morning, February 6th. So we'll have more capacity for folks to join in, and there'll be some emails coming out, and we'll be sure to get the message out about that one. But if you haven't been to a state council meeting and you want to maybe just kind of peek in and hear the kind of level of discussions that go on, this is a great opportunity.
Great. That's great. And, I think your point is really wise about the Zoom. It gives people an access to, rather than have to drive over to Appleton or Green Bay or those areas. And I can say firsthand, when I first got involved with the chapter, I went, one of the first years I was involved with the chapter, I was blown away by the content and the conversations and all that goes on. That really got me much more, interested and eager to hear and see more about the project. So I think that's great if there'll be some Zoom opportunities, and, we'll sure promote it as a chapter as well, the others. But
yeah, they usually run, we meet face to face. It'll be like a 5 or 6 hour meeting, and I'm going to try to shorten it up just because we are all going to be online, and that's a long time to sit in front of the computer. So a lot of times in the afternoons, we'll have guests come in and give presentations and things like that. And some of that stuff might just get cut out, and we might actually save some of those presentations and bring them in as some of our regular Talking Trout episodes in the future for our Wednesday Zooms. So
that's great. Great. Well, just great things happening. We sure appreciate it. Thanks for being on here, and thanks for all your work with TU. We greatly appreciate it.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Thank you.
Time with me.
Take care, everybody.